Coming to you live from Denver, Colorado, the Mile High City. I'm Chris Pardo. Thank you very much for listening, whatever time zone you happen to be in, whether it's an Eastern time zone, Midwest time zone, wherever you are. Some of us are kind of having some afternoon time. Some of us are still in the morning time. So, either way, I want to thank you very much for listening. We have a lot to talk about today, as usual. Baseball, of course, is on tap. And, of course, as usual, the story with baseball is we have an early game coming up today. So, I think I really would like to get started into that as soon as I can. But it's a 7 o'clock game, so it's really not all that bad. But anyway, I just wanted to tell you about that. We have 3 games on tap as far as baseball is concerned, and we're going to be looking at the Rays against the Phillies, Texas against Cleveland, and the Cincinnati Reds against those Milwaukee Brewers. Those are the 3 games we're going to be talking about. Going to take a look at the line movement in those games and kind of trying to determine in which direction the pros are going. Bring you up to date as to how that little method or system is doing, tell you how it did yesterday and over the past few days. So this way, if you are following it, and you want to see if there's any trend happening or you want to go against the pros or with them, it'll give you at least an opportunity to kind of see how they've been doing over the past few days. But also, we're going to be talking about college football. We are now in ground zero, as we call it. We're just prepared, ready to launch the college football season this coming weekend. So we've got some notes and analysis on some ideas and thoughts, and they're going to try to share them with you. Of course, it's up to you to kind of listen to them if you want and kind of see which it is that we're talking about that might be of some interest to you. And perhaps you might be able to implement it with whatever system you're using right now to choose your teams that you're going to bet on. And of course, we always urge you that if you are doing well with your system, whatever it is, stay with it. Yeah, tweak it here and there. It might need a tweak somewhere along the line when you're looking at a game with 2 teams that are really close together. You're not sure it's a coin flip type of game. It's a pick 'em game, and you're not sure which way you really want to go. Perhaps something we tell you about that game might help you go in the direction that you may want to go to. So that's something we can kind of bring to your attention, and hopefully you can use that information as well. But as usual, one of the first things we do when we do start the show is we take a look at what happened yesterday as far as betting was concerned. To begin with, let's take a look at the NFL. Finally, you NFL bettors, you got a few days rest now. You don't have to worry about it for a few days. You had a real long week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You really had a great week to start betting. And the beauty of it was the fact that the team, when you have 4 days like that, the teams are not all bunched up into one day like it is during the regular season when you really have a plethora of games on Sunday. Then you have a couple of games on Monday and Thursday. So this way they were kind of spread out. So it kind of gave you a chance to kind of look it over, see how you've been doing so far, see whether you want to go a certain direction or not. So it's all over now. But again, we got one more week to go before the season actually does start. So yesterday, to end it all, the Saints beat the Jaguars. It's quite a little different game, 23-21. They wrapped up preseason week 2. The Jaguars covered in that game. They were 4-point road underdogs, and they covered because they got that what we call a back door. In other words, as you come down to the final minutes of the game, a lot of times teams kind of let up. They don't want to pressure anything. They want to be very. Some coaches are very careful. They don't want to, really lay it on somebody because they don't want them to come back and do it to them later on. So they kind of backdoored by outscoring the Saints 18-0 the fourth quarter. Saints did not score in the fourth quarter. They went over that total of 40 points on the Jaguars' last touchdown, and there was about 2.5 minutes left to play in the game when that happened. So we're talking about over 37 betting. We kind of cautioned you yesterday a little careful because now that you're up in that 70, 80% area, it's all got to come down to normal, okay? And normal is much more closer to 60% and 50% than it is to 80%. And of course, the numbers don't lie. Eventually, they kind of straighten themselves out. They trend in one direction for a while, then they cut back and start trending in another direction. And when all is said and done, they all meet at that same place. So the favorites went 11-4 straight up for this week. You had one pick 'em, and again, that one pick 'em, you say, what one pick 'em? We didn't have a pick 'em here. We're talking about Las Vegas. So any numbers we talk about, we're talking about Vegas odds. But the dogs still lead 10-5 against the spread this entire week. The favorites still lead, however, overall 21-11 straight up. But the dogs lead 17-14 against the spread. The road teams are 11-5 straight up. They were 13-3 against the spread this week. 13-3. So overall, from week 1 and week 2, the road teams are 19-13 straight up, but they're 21-10 against the spread, which is very close to 68%. The unders went 10-6. The unders are still dominating. They're 24-9, which kind of puts them almost at 73% as a win percentage. Some things to kind of look at, some things to think about. Now, in baseball yesterday, them Yankees, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago about possibly betting on the Yankees to win the American League East because they looked like they were ready and primed with all the new additions they had to go. They extended their win streak to 10 games in a game that really closed as a pick 'em against the Braves, who were also coming into the game with a 9-game winning streak. The favorites went 4-2 in other games. The upsets, of course, were by the Royals at a plus 215 against the Astros, and the Mariners a plus 124 against the A's. The favorites are now at almost 60% on the season. Now, the favorites are 67.3% in August. So over the season so far, favorites are 59.5%. As far as August is concerned, it's over 67%. The unders went 4-3 yesterday. The over's slim lead was cut down to 50%, just a little over 50%. So the Yankees extended their win streak to 10 games. They beat the Braves. The Braves' 9-game winning streak came to an end. So if you're still involved in betting winning and losing trends, okay, now you have what we call a situation where a team coming off of a winning streak that loses generally comes back and loses the next game as well. That's called as the swagger theory of winning and losing streaks. So if you're still involved in that, just a reminder that right as of today's game, you still can take the Braves. Of course, if you're betting the Yankees, you can bet them as well. They're on a 10-game winning streak. The question is, how much further will they go? So they're in that situation. The Braves are now as a swagger theory play for today. Again, we're not spending much time talking about that anymore, but when something like this where it's catching the attention of people, just kind of bring it to your attention once again to say that, if you're still interested, this is one time you might be able to pick up some money by betting on the Braves to lose. In other words, the Yankees to win their 11th game in a row. So that's the story of what happened yesterday. We're going to take our first break. And of course, if you've listened to the show before, we take 3 breaks within the show. Each one is of 1 minute duration. Kind of gives us a chance to kind of take a quick sip of water and get ready for the next segment, which is going to be looking at 3 games. We're going to look at the line movement, try to give you an idea as to which direction the pros are going. Rays against Philadelphia, Texas against Cleveland, and the Reds against the Brewers. So we'll be back into the zone in 1 minute. And welcome back. Here we go again. You're back in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo. We're coming to you live from the Mile High City, Denver, Colorado, on your I 95 Sports and Entertainment Network. Of course, you might also be listening to us on one of our podcast platforms, such as Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google Podcasts or iHeartRadio, just to name a few. We're also on milehighradio.com, as well as we're also on Blackjack TV. So we're everywhere. Very easy to find and very easy to get a hold of if you need to make some comments about our show, whether you like them or you dislike them, or maybe we talked much about something, not enough about something else. By all means, send us that email. Send it to the Sports Wagering Zone at gmail.com. That's the Sports Wagering Zone at gmail.com. Well, we got 15 Major League games on tap for today. We picked three of them out as far as line movement was concerned. So let's go and take a look and see where the action is, where the money is going on these three particular games. To begin with, at 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time, the Tampa Rays, who are 77-48 in Philadelphia, to play the Phillies, 63-61. Both teams over 500. Now, this is a 2008 World Series rematch. If you remember, these two teams were against each other. You got a pair of interleague teams. They're looking to solidify their postseason spot as to where they are. As far as the Rays are concerned, they're in first place. They're on top of the American League East. They have to keep winning because the Yankees are as hot as can be, and they're hot on their trail. They're only 4 games behind. On the other side, the Phillies are 4.5 games back of the National League East and 5 games back of that second wild card spot. So this way, they're really fighting for that second wild card spot. Of course, they're looking to try to get into first place, but they have a better chance at that wild card spot instead. Now, in today's opener, the Rays come out with their right-hander, Drew Rasmussen. He's 1-0 so far with a 3.30 ERA. And the Phillies come back with their left-hander, Ranger Suarez. He's 5-4 with a 1.47 ERA. Now, as we look at the line on this game, opened as a virtual pick'em here in Vegas. Both sides listed as roughly about minus 105 on the odds board as far as the money line is concerned. So that's kind of a toss-up. But then respected money, the pros, they came in on the Rays. And of course, you know what happens when they come in? The numbers actually climb up or down. So Tampa Bay moved up from a minus 105 to a minus 115 road favorite, which at 115 is really not a bad price either. Now, keep one thing in mind. These non-division favorites, when they move 10 cents of steam or more, they're at 61% so far this season as far as a win percentage is concerned. Now, Tampa Bay, they just beat the White Sox 9-0. So the road favorites coming off a big win like that of 5 runs or more are at 65% this season. And also short road favorites, that's minus 150 or less. And they're coming off a win. They're at 60%. So you can see, as far as the analytical data is concerned, it seems to be pointing definitely over to the Tampa Rays in this game. Tampa is 2-0 against Philadelphia this season, beat them twice. The pros have also hit the under in this game. They jumped on the under at 9.5, and they steamed it down to 9. So in this game between Philadelphia and Tampa Bay, if you're looking at it, started out as a toss-up, it still isn't that far apart. When you're talking about minus 115 from minus 105 on the money line, you're not really that big of a favorite. But as far as the pros are concerned, that's where they are going. They're going on the Tampa Rays, and they're also going on the under in this game. Meanwhile, also around 7 o'clock, you've got the Texas Rangers, who are 43-81 against the Cleveland Indians, who are right at 500, 61-61. Now, once again, these are non-division teams. And if you look at those numbers, 43, 81, 61, 61, you can see that the teams are trending in opposite directions. The Rangers own the third worst record in baseball, just ahead of the Diamondbacks and the Orioles. Now, Texas, it's just 4-14 over their last 18 games. In the meantime, the Indians, well, they just swept the Angels, and they're now 5-2 over their last 7 games. Cleveland is 8 games back of the second wild card spot in the American League. And in tonight's game, that's the first game of the series. The Texans come in with their left-hander Taylor Hearn. He's 2-4 with a 3.97 ERA. Cleveland, they come back with their right-hander Eli Morgan. He's 2-5 with a 5.80 ERA. Now, as we look at the line of this game, opened with the Indians, a minus 150 home favorite. The Rangers, a plus 140 road dog at the open. The pros have gotten down hard on Cleveland, steaming Cleveland up from that minus 150 up to minus 165 on the money line. Now, keep in mind, once again, these non-division home teams that are favorites, they're home favorites. They're at 62% this season. We just talked about it. Now, the sweet spot non-division home favorites. The sweet spot is the money line between minus 150 and minus 175. Those teams are at 65% this season. This is also what we call a schedule spot advantage for Cleveland because they were off yesterday. The Rangers played because they lost 8-4 to the Red Sox. So the rested favorites against teams on back-to-back, they're at 62% as well. So once again, you see that analytically, everything seems to be pointing to Cleveland in this game. Cleveland is 35-18 as whenever they were a favorite this year. And of course, as a dog, Texas is 34-69. The Indians are 32-27. They have a win percentage at home. The Rangers, well, when they're on the road, they only win 15 out of 15 times. They lose 47 times. So just something to kind of think about as well. So in this game, laying a little more wood, Cleveland Indians over the Texas Rangers as far as the pros are concerned. The first game we talked about, the Tampa Rays against the Philadelphia Phillies. In that game, the pros are on the Phillies, and they're also on the under in that game as well. We have one more game left to talk about. That's the 8 o'clock game between the Cincinnati Reds and the Milwaukee Brewers. So let's get that second break out of the way. And when we do come back, we'll talk about that game. We'll see where the money line is going there. And we're also going to talk about this little system or method we've been talking about, give you an idea as to how well or how bad it's doing as well. So just a reminder, we'll be back into the zone in 60 seconds. And welcome back. Here we go again. You're back in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo. We're coming to you live from Denver, Colorado, the Mile High City, they call it. The Mile High City. It certainly is. Anyway, we're talking baseball, kind of dwindling down now. things are starting to separate a little more. You're starting to get more of the favorites that are coming in. You kind of see things like that going on. We talked about two games earlier, so in case you tuned in a little late and into us on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, we talked about the Tampa Rays against the Philadelphia Phillies, a game that opened up as a pick-'em on the money line, but of course the pros came in on the Phillies, the team. I'm sorry, on the Tampa Rays. I'm looking at Philadelphia Phillies in front of me. The Tampa Rays, the pros came in on the Tampa Rays, and of course that moved that line a little bit from minus 105, moving it on up to minus 115, and it may climb a little more before the game actually begins. All the analytics seem to point to the Tampa Rays in this game, plus the under if you're interested. Another game we talked about with the Texas Rangers, Cleveland Indians. The pros in this game are on the Cleveland Indians, as well as most of the analytical data so far as well. So we have one game left to talk about. It's around 8 o'clock. You've got the Cincinnati Reds, 69 and 57, playing the Milwaukee Brewers 76 and 49. Now, both of these National League Central teams are really on some hot streaks right now. They've gone 7 and 3 over their last 10 games. The first place Brewers, they just took 2 or 3 against the Nationals, while the Reds, they just swept the Marlins, all games, all 3. Cincinnati trails Milwaukee by 7.5 games in the division, but they're actually in the second NL wild spot. So they're in the second position for the second wild spot in the National League, and they're leading the Padres by 1 game. So they have to keep on winning. In tonight's series game, Cincinnati comes out with their right-hander, Tyler Mahle. He's 10 and 4, 3 and 7, 3.78 is his ERA. Milwaukee starts their right-hander ace Corbin Burns. He's 8 and 4 with a 2.13 ERA. As we look at the line in this game, it opened with the Brewers way up there, minus 175 home favorite, and the Reds were a plus 160 road dog. Now, the public, they're somewhat split on this one. You know, both teams really hot. They're both going against each other. They're not sure who they want to back in this game. And yet, we've seen the Brewers line move up from being a minus 175 to minus 185. And what that means, the pro money is coming in on the Brewers. Big home favorites of minus 150 or more. If they're coming off a day off, they're at, like we said earlier, 64% this season. So, home favorite, day off the day before, they're at 64% as a win percentage this season. Now, home favorites off of a win, okay, are at 61%, as are the Milwaukee Brewers in this instance. We could also be looking at a lower scoring game in this game. The total is 7.5. The public says, yeah, 7.5. This looks like an easy over with the total being that low. However, the line has remained frozen. It hasn't moved at 7.5, and the juice is trending to the under at minus 115. So, although the public seems to think it's an over total, the pros seem to think it's going to be an under total. So that's how you kind of look at this particular game. Once again, the pros and the analytics all agree. The Milwaukee Brewers over the Cincinnati Reds and the under in this game. So once again, the other two games this evening, 7:05, the Tampa Rays against Philadelphia, started out as a pick'em. Money came in with the pros on the Tampa Rays. They like the Tampa Rays in this game, and they're also on the under in this game as well. Also at 7 o'clock, you got the Rangers against the Indians. In this particular game, the pros and the general public are on the Cleveland Indians. And as we just got finished talking, the Reds against the Brewers, the pros are on the Brewers and they're also on the under, while the general public is on the over in this game. So those are the three games we talked about. We go and went over the line movement in these games, and by checking that line movement kind of gives you an idea as to which direction the pros are going. Now, as far as this little method is concerned, a system if you want to call it, yesterday we had two plays. We had the Houston over Kansas City, which was a loser, and of course had the A's over Seattle, which was a loser. So the two plays yesterday were both losses. By losing those two games, the percentage dropped from 61 to 59%. You would have had 61 plays in the month of August with 36 winners. That's 59%. Now, the day before, we had three plays, two winners, one loser. The day before that, we had three plays, two winners, one loser. And the day before that, we had three plays and all three losers. So you can kind of see the numbers are starting to coalesce. Yeah, they were up there in the high 70s for a while. But, in reality, as far as the pros and as well as they do, it's somewhere between, say, 58 and 61%. So, yes, they're going to trend sometimes and hit real high. And then sometimes they're going to start out on the lower end under those numbers. But right now, as we can see, it's starting to level off a little more. We give you this information so that, maybe you want to bet with them, you want to bet against them, you want to see how they've been doing lately. That's their story in the month of August. 59% going into tonight's action. So that's the story on baseball. We're going to take our final break, and when we come back, we're going to take a look at some college football because, like we said, this is ground zero, as we say. This is the few days before we launch the season this coming weekend. So we have some thoughts and ideas. We want to share them with you. You can use them if you want. You can kind of maybe help you with something that you might be thinking about doing. But again, it's our thoughts, our thinking on what's going on or what will be going on in college football, as well as the thoughts of others as well. We kind of coalesce all the information that we can get and put it all together, kind of let you know what's going on. So we're going to take that final break. And when we come back, that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk college football in 1 minute. And welcome back. Here we go. You're back in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo. We're coming to you live from the Mile High City, Denver, Colorado, on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as podcasting on most of your major podcast platforms such as Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google Podcasts. We're very easy to get a hold of to listen to any time of the day or night. So we talked about baseball in the first part of the show. Now let's talk about college football because, we kind of refer to this week as ground zero, week zero. And just about everybody at this point in time that loves college football, loves to bet on college football, this is a time to really start having some fun. It's the start of, well, kind of a prolonged, really magical stretch. Just keeps to go on and on, weekend after weekend. A ton of betting possibilities coming up. And it's a time for not only hope and excitement, but you know what? Those double IPAs and late night chases are also going to be coming into play as well. It's time for betting the overs, contrarian angles we're going to be taking a look at. And some of us, hey, maybe we're going to be drinking more than just one IPA. We may be going for doubles. But, I'm not an IPA man myself. I'm more of I guess, more of a Coors guy living out here in Denver, Colorado. But understand something. This is going to be a fun week. You're going to be doing a lot of work. You're going to be looking at a lot of different data, coming up with different thoughts and ideas, checking lines, seeing some college games, try to see what's coming out. So let's take a look and kind of give you an idea about some notes that we've made, some tidbits and observations about the upcoming season. If you've listened to the show before, you know that I've been kind of talking about Georgia without, most of the time, and whenever we talked about college football, but and I kind of like them to a certain degree. I thought they'd do pretty good this season, but then some things started happening. Yeah, there's a potential situation with the Bulldogs, especially when they go against Clemson. Potential in this particular game is really the key word because we really don't know anything else. What we do know is not good news. Tight end turned wideout Arik Gilbert, the team's big off-scene acquisition, is away from the program for personal reasons, so he's not practicing with the team. We also know that their tight end, Darnell Washington, a big piece of the offense, has a foot injury. That makes him available and not very much to look at. Tyke Smith, a great defensive back who came over from West Virginia, also has a foot injury. Now, while not necessarily backbreaking losses if they're out of week one, anything less than full strength is less than ideal, especially when you're playing Clemson in the first game. Clemson is still a 3.5 point favorite in the game. And of course, we'll watch it closely. We'll kind of give you some more news as we get it. Listening to other programs, you'll get more news on those injuries and then make your decision if you're going to bet this game at all. Because we know about Clemson right now, they're still a 3.5 point favorite. But again, we'll be following it all week long. Now, I'm also curious to see what's going to happen with this kind of get together between the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Pac 12. Now, of course, they're doing this because the SEC is adding Texas and Oklahoma. So they're going to say, okay, you're going to do this. So we're going to try to get together and see what we can put together. And while I love that idea of a more regulated out of conference scheduling, okay, this feels more like posturing than anything else. But again, more details will come out about it. Big Ten, ACC, Pac 12, trying to put something together because the ACC is adding Texas and Oklahoma. So again, this is kind of the big guy in town. Okay, you guys are going to do this. We're going to counter with this. So we'll keep an eye on that as well and see how important that becomes in college football this season. Now, CJ Stroud, we know he's going to be the starting quarterback now at Ohio State. A lot of people thought it was going to happen. It looks like that's what it's going to be. Now, Stroud's Heisman odds went from 14-1 to 12-1 once the announcement came out that he was going to be the starting quarterback. Now, despite playing in only one limited instance last year, because he was backing up Justin Fields, of course, Stroud is tied for fourth in Heisman odds. Ryan Day really is a quarterback whisperer, and I don't expect a massive drop at the position despite how gifted Fields was. Now, as I talked about last week, Ohio State is in the business at quarterback, and that's what they're going to be doing over the foreseeable future. If you've been following football, if you're old enough where you can kind of go back 15, 20 years, then watching Ohio State football, quarterback didn't make any difference because all he had to do was hand off the ball to a running back. But now it's kind of changing. The whole situation is changing. They're now into quarterbacks, seeing how important a good quarterback can be. Now, a point spread that I find kind of fascinating in this first week, I looked at BYU. They're an 11-point favorite against Arizona. Now, I know BYU, they were pretty good last year, but by laying that many points on the road and they're playing a Pac 12 team, especially after they lost Zach Wilson to the NFL, it's kind of something to look at. BYU, 11-point favorite against Arizona. Take a closer look at this game if you're thinking about betting it at all. The offensive line was decimated, which could make for an interesting debut. The Arizona is in shambles. They're looking for a fresh start. They got a new coach, Jedi Frisch, but this might be just too many points for them to overcome. So BYU minus 11. Take a close look at this game. Those are the things you have to start thinking about. And now it's time that I just want to say one other thing. I hate preseason polls, okay? I just ignore them totally because you know what? They put a bias into this game. It decides to play off with a group of people instead of the games themselves. We shouldn't be doing any meaningful polls until sometime in October when you get a chance to see how well the teams are doing, how well they're stacking up against each other. So again, be careful with these preseason polls. If you're interested in them, kind of just glance over them a little bit, but don't pay much attention to them. Who knows how good? We're talking about Georgia. We were talking about Georgia a couple of weeks ago, how they had a real good potential situation in the SEC. Now, all of a sudden, some of the players have leg injuries, things start happening. So, polls early in the season don't mean much. Look back over the years, just think about it. All right. Yeah, sometimes when a team is so great, like Clemson or LSU during those days, you say they can't miss. Yeah, that's true. But then you got to look down a little further and check those polls as well on these other teams and other schools as well. So that's the story there. Listen to the polls, look at them for a minute, and then kind of discard them and say, yeah, okay, that's what you think, but this is what I think, okay? Anyway, thanks for listening. Once again, I want to remind you of the three games we talked about today as far as baseball is concerned. The pros like the Rays over Philadelphia, they like the Indians over Texas, and they like the Brewers over the Reds. Those are the three games we talked about. We looked at the line movement in those games. We looked at the money line movement, see which direction the pros are going. Kind of give you that information. We'll leave it up to you as to what you want to do with it. Anyway, once again, thanks for listening. Just a reminder, we're here every day, Monday through Friday. We're here at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, right here, live from Denver, Colorado on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as podcasting on most of your major podcast platforms such as Apple, iHeartRadio. I can go on and on. I'm not going to, okay? Thanks again for listening. I hope you have a really great Tuesday. And of course, if you're going to be betting today, hey, I hope you have a profitable Tuesday as well. So until tomorrow, once again at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm Chris Pardo. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back again tomorrow, 1 o'clock, right here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. Goodbye, everybody.